So Back in Action is actually a really brilliant action comedy movie from Netflix that marks Cameron Diaz's long-awaited 10-year return back to Hollywood. So the name Back in Action really does have a double meaning, and I think it's really interesting that she is playing opposite Jamie Foxx, who she also starred with in Annie, which was her last movie all the way 10 years ago. And they've both very famously said that the way in which Jamie Foxx was able to convince Cameron Diaz to come back was that he was going to say, in this movie, we are just going to have non-stop fun, which you can definitely see coming across the screen, as you can just tell that Cameron Diaz is having an absolute blast with Jamie Foxx and everyone else. Now, it is a bit of a shame that this movie has got a low RT score, both the professional reviewers as well as the audience, as I personally had such a fun time with this movie. I think it's such an easy watch popcorn flick, and even though you can see the twist coming a mile away, I think you can, sit back and relax, easily watch this movie. You can switch your brain off to an extent, and there are plenty of action sequences. I mean, that is one thing that I would say with Netflix movies. They are really good, as you can tell that they are spending a lot of budget on making massive action sequences, and not just one, but plenty of them spread across this movie. And I think the dynamic of these two spies reluctantly / wanting to secretly return back to their old work, along with the fact that their kids don't know anything about their past and now are suddenly embroiled in this massive scenario, I do actually think is pretty compelling, and the way in which they've executed it definitely does feel pretty unique. Now, as far as the cast is concerned, you can tell that this is a true Netflix superstar-led movie, as we've got lots of stars who have recently joined the Netflix family. For example, Jamie Foxx a few years ago was in Day Shift, and of course very recently Andrew Scott was brilliantly in Ripley. And I think the opening sequence immediately when this movie started, I think it started on an absolute high with the mansion raid sequence. Even though you have seen that kind of a sequence happening in loads of other movies, I thought the way in which Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx were interacting with Chandler and everybody else I thought was pretty cool. And this was very quickly followed on by a plane sequence, which I don't know about you, but I think it really reminded me of the opening sequence with Ben Parker in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think Cameron Diaz does a really good job as Emily. You can tell, like I said before, that she is having an absolute blast making this movie. Of course, she's very stunt trained in the Charlie's Angels movies. And I really like this character as she is trying really, really hard to connect with her daughter. And even though she has got a really cool background, I think the message that everybody does find it tricky to connect with teenagers is actually pretty relatable. Very similarly, I think Jamie Foxx is really good as Matt. He is always slick in every single role that he is playing, and he is really slick here as well. Of course, very recently he did have a health scare, which actually happened during production of this movie. And not just with Jamie Foxx, I feel like with everybody, you can always tell the sequences where they are just going to be looking away from camera and suddenly they're going to be replaced by their stunt double. As we are watching this movie, you know that Emily's mother's character is going to be played by someone famous, and then when you see that it's Glenn Close, I think she was able to bring so much class and charm to the role, and I actually really believe that she actually is Emily's mother, as I feel like the interactions between the two of them were not only really believable, they had a lot of chemistry, and you can tell that they have got a strained relationship with a lot of love underneath that. And I feel like Emily was able to learn a lot from her relationship with her mother, which was able to help her relationship with her own daughter. Demetriou, I feel like, was a little bit try-hard when you first see him on screen, but then he kind of finds his groove with all of the other actors in this movie, and then by the end of it, I thought he was pretty hilarious. Very similarly, I feel like the kids were a little bit over the top when you first see them on screen, but then when they're kind of unraveling the mystery and the truth behind what is happening with their parents, I think both actors then kind of relaxed into the role, and then I feel like the dynamic was absolutely brilliant between the four of them. Chandler's character was pretty good as well. Like I said, you can see the twist coming a mile away, and I feel like Andrew Scott was brilliant as always. I feel like he is one of Hollywood's most underrated actors, as he is just so good, not only with his line delivery, but I feel like when he is saying one thing and then he suddenly changes the tone, is just so captivating from an audience perspective, as you can really see that he is a master of his craft. I like the way in which they ended this movie, as you just know that very similarly to Cameron Diaz's Emily's character's mother being played by Glenn Close, of course her father will equally be played by someone really, really famous as well, and I cannot wait to hopefully see that in the second movie, which I'm very sure that they will produce, as this movie movie has had a ton of viewers despite the low RT score. So I personally really enjoyed Back in Action. I feel like Netflix really have got this sweet spot in terms of action comedy movies with really strong actors. For example, with Red 1, Red Notice, and of course The Grey Man as well. So I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with the sequel. But as far as Back in Action is concerned, I had such a fun time with it, and so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of Back in Action? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.